Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Parlons de Livres. My name is Judith Iya. You're a books lover, you want to discover writers, listen to their stories, you are welcome on this channel. Let's start. Press the red button, subscribe. To those who did already, thank you, because you're helping us build a strong book community. Thank you. Today, Mr. Paul Petrek SOREN is going to talk about his book. Actually, two books. One is Courage and the second one is Wolves at Our Door. These books talk about World War II. So very interesting because it just takes us back to the history book. Listen to Mr. Soren. Good morning, Mr. Soren. Good morning. And before we talk about Courage, can you please introduce yourself to the listeners?
Yes, hi, I'm Soren Paul Petrek. I'm the author of the Madeleine Tosh series. The first novel is Parlons de Courage, or in Europe, Italy, well, France, Italy, and Denmark, it's entitled Courage for short. The series takes place in the Second World War. My background, I'm an attorney. I do criminal defense, trial law. I'm married, I have two grown sons, and everybody's healthy and happy. So that's pretty much me. Would you like me to speak more about the series now, or do you have some questions?
No, it's good. I think you introduce yourself to the listeners. I think it's enough what you told them. We're going to talk about Courage. The first one here, I listened because let me tell you something. It's the first time I really enjoy listening a book. Usually I like to hand a book in my hand and see the world, yeah, see everything. But this one is so well, you know, the voice of the person who is telling the story, I really enjoy it. I really enjoy it, yeah. So
I could give you some background on that if you wish. The Saga Egmont, Lindhart and Roloff, they're my publisher. Their French division hired an actress, a French actress from X, and she has narrated 3 of my books now. She is an experienced actress, narrator. She lives in Los Angeles and works in both Hollywood, but then also I think does a great deal of voiceover work, and also, of course, narrating books for Audible and for various different companies. And because she's from X, the accent and the Provençal accent is correct. And so that's about what I can tell you there. I have been able to, it's Cecilia Delapierre, I've been able to sort of form a friendship with her over these screens.
yeah, I guess.
She's talented and very nice.
Really. She did a good job. She did a good job. I'm a big reader, you know, but I like to hand the book in my hand, read, see the world, everything. But this one, I have to listen it. Oh, it is also, she did a very good job. Really.
I was very impressed. My French isn't that good, but both my translator and of course Cecile are French. And so I believe that the translation from English was very good, was very well done, and interpreted well by Cecile. And so, yeah, would you like me now to tell you some more?
So now, who is Madeleine Tosh?
Madeleine Tosh is, at the beginning of the book, she's a young French woman. She lives in La Ciotat. I wasn't specific about her age, but 19 or 20. Her 20 years old. Her brother Yves is a twin, and he's wounded and killed in the war ultimately, and that sort of begins her adventure, brings her out of her working in her family's restaurant and being more or less going on with her normal life. His death, and then unfortunately, ultimately, her rape by a German SS officer begins to change her. Yeah. She's already working with the local resistance, moving children, Jewish children, out of France, out of basically anywhere that they've come from, and helping them to escape to Spain. And so when she is raped, it changes her. She becomes more aggressive. I would say that the revenge part of her personality comes out a great deal. And she, I don't want to give the whole story away necessarily, but this part is all right. She, with the help of her father and another man who was friends with the family, a fisherman, she kills the SS officer who raped her, and she escapes through the same route to Spain to then try to get to England and join the Free French there. So circumstances have changed her from a relatively serious but affable young person into an angry, now violent, revenge-seeking person. And that, of course, happens in war, certainly during occupations we've seen many times, or in all the examples we have of where nations are invaded and their oppressors try to hold them. People react to that. And of course, we have the many great stories and the influences and information about the French resistance, and particularly the women in the French resistance. And we only know some stories. And unfortunately, I believe that's because so many narratives focus on men and soldiers and big names, you know, and so much gets lost about the people behind the scenes, particularly in the resistance, French resistance, where many of the leaders were women, and that was because, in part, they were good at it, but then also because the men were either fighting or captured, and so, like many times in life, the responsibility then falls to the women. And it's my belief that their kind of courage, their type of courage, is that cold, lonely courage that we describe. They're able to function better than men, particularly when they are alone. Men, this is just generalization, you know, but men seem to function better in a more unit, like a military unit, or in a spy unit where there's more support or more men. Women were chosen as agents by the British Special Operations Executive because they were able to function that successfully. And I talk about Madeline's transition into the British Special Operations Executive.
Yeah, she was hired. She was taken on and recruited after she was turned down by the French, who had a chauvinistic attitude towards what she'd done already. And she, along with many others, women were trained to be agents and actually put in the field. Nobody else did that. It was Winston Churchill's Army of the Shadows. Yeah, it's what I discovered. I didn't know that this SOE, you call it, British Special Operation Executive. Yes. We don't hear that much about them, even in history books. I never heard about them. I came across it by accident many years after I began to learn and research and read for enjoyment about adventures in the Second World War. I stumbled across it, and then I began to do a great deal of research. The French division, they tried to hire particularly women who were either French, had a French background. They wanted them to be able to speak French as a native. And sometimes they were British women who grew up with their families in France, and so had that, or they were expatriates, that had then moved to England or fled to England when the Nazis invaded. And so the accuracy of they couldn't be tripped up. They were French speakers,
Then they had to find the kind of person who was capable of killing and functioning, keeping their wits and their head about them in very dangerous situations. The best way for me to describe that is the life expectancy of a radio operator that was parachuted into northern France by the British was hours, not days. If you lived 3 or 4 days, you were doing well without being captured. And so it was, they knew, and they were young people. When we're young, we think we're never going to die. And so there was an aspect of bravado, you know, among the people that were fighting, the younger people, and going into dangerous positions. But they also were in an environment where they were being attacked, and so they wanted to do their part, men and women. And so another reason is because the Germans, the Nazis, had a very chauvinistic attitude towards women as well. Sometimes when there was a checkpoint, the women could just go around it because the Nazis didn't think that they were capable of doing anything that would be harmful to them. The fact that they were, many were doing it. Madeline then is trained. She's trained by the character
Hartman.
I created him out of a real
very tough Hartman too.
Yes, Bertolt Hartmann was a German soldier in the First World War. He was Jewish, and he won the Iron Cross. The real character, the real person. I added another character. I embellished that character, that real person's character, with another person who was a spy for the Germans, and also had been involved with fighting the British in the Boer War.
Who is this one, Jack or Durand?
No. Bertolt Hartmann is the person who, the German Jewish ex-spy who trained her to kill. Jack is a British commando who they trained the field agents in a variety of different things that they needed to survive. Hartmann was there for the sole purpose of training an assassin.
And he trained Madeleine very well.
Yeah, he did. And I think when he chose her, it was not only because she had what he thought was being capable, but also the mental strength and perspective to do that. If you could take the biggest, strongest commando male young man, and if he hesitates because he's killing somebody, he won't be effective. She never hesitates. She's killed now. When she's in training. She's killed at least 3 people that we know of, and so then so there's no hesitation. Her revenge-based attitude and her cool demeanor allows her to function so in such a deadly manner.
Cold, very cold.
And so that's why he chose her. He didn't see the difference between he didn't think gender was important at all. It's just the ability to act under pressure, in probably most circumstances, in a situation where you're probably going to die. Yeah,
because you describe the scene where she got tortured.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's her. She has a great deal of personal fortitude, but then also she trusts herself and her abilities to act and her intelligence, and so. But she's a combination of 2 things: a person like you and I, but then also there's an element to her that was brought to life by her rape and by the death of and it's a very dangerous part of her personality. She can control it, but once she allows it to surface, it almost takes over. So she's the last person you'd ever want to chase into a building.
Yeah.
That goes in after her.
But you create.
I wanted to create a character where Hartman actually creates or trains a person he then recognizes to be better at it than he is.
Yeah.
And he does in subsequent. Hartman shows up again in Wolves at the Door, Wolves at Our Door. This has two different names as well. But then also in Angels Don't Die.
Yeah.
He becomes, and I'm giving a little bit away here, but he becomes the head of the Israeli Mossad. In 1970, they reunite during the Yom Kippur War.
Wow.
And so Hartman never goes away, neither do Stenger and Willie. And now I'm writing about the German police, Stenger and Willie, who were chasing Madeline. I'm writing their story in World War I.
Wow.
So many people identify or like those two characters. They're very sympathetic, they're patriotic, but they're not evil, or they're certainly not Nazis. They do everything they can to break the Gestapo and the SS. They see themselves as police officers, responsible to protect people. Combatants are different. They fought in the war, in the First World War. They understand combat and soldiers. They don't understand when soldiers prey on individuals, on people, and otherwise innocent families and people. And that's where the aspect of Ordor Serglan comes in. I needed a pivotal atrocity, and so when I did my research, I came across the stories about and the history about Ordor Serglan that I believe is still kept as a memorial.
Yeah, I have a question. About this one. Yeah, do we actually know the real motivation of this horrific massacre committed by the SS at Ordor Serglan?
I don't think we have the specific answer. I think there were perhaps it was where there were many motivations for it. The same unit, the same Das Reich division, had already massacred and killed most of the men down to the age maybe of 12 or 14 in Toul.
And babies.
They were still angry. They were still, and they claimed they were looking for guns, but in all likelihood, there is a very believable backstory that's been told that there was actually gold that was stolen back.
Yeah.
And so I think for them to massacre everybody, there had to have been more motivation than just revenge.
600 people, right? 600 people. My goodness.
Don't know for sure.
Wow. Just because of gold or guns?
I think they at that point the Das Reich division had come from the battles with the Russian army, and there were atrocities on both sides, mostly because of how the Germans had treated Russian civilians when they attacked Russia. And so there's a revenge element of it. But these people, the Das Reich division, came from there. They were SS officers, and they were super Nazis, for lack of a better way to say it. And so killing civilians to them was of no consequence.
Yeah, no consequence.
They were used to doing that. And so, because they didn't see any difference between French people, peasants, normal, local, everyday people, or their counterparts, those people's counterparts in Russia.
Yeah.
They had killed. We don't know all of the terrible things they did.
Okay.
But those are a couple that we do know about: the massacre at Ordor Serglan, and then also the men in Toul.
Yeah, you wrote the Russian winter stopped them in their tracks, and also you wrote that the Siberian troops were the best winter fighters in the world.
Absolutely, they came down from Siberia. If you're fighting the Russian winter, historically, as we look at Napoleon's invasion and others, I live in a part of the world that gets very cold. Northern Minnesota. I've been outside when the temperature, and I don't know the Celsius conversion, but when it's been minus 50 degrees below zero, I've seen and heard tree limbs explode. There's no more, the way I would describe it is, you can't be outside for very long because your face will, your exposed skin will freeze.
Yeah.
It's so quiet that air, that super cold air, carries sound waves. All the animals and the birds, who must be smarter than people, are hiding because it's so cold. So Russian winter has days like that that are extended. And so if you're fighting in the cold, everything hurts, everything freezes, wounds can't heal. It's just, exposed flesh dies. And so when they ran into, when the German army now has to deal with men and women from Siberia, used to the cold, that are fighting back, they stopped them about 19 miles from the Kremlin. That's how close they got. And then, of course, the giant power of Russia, and to a degree now, is the people, the vast numbers of people that they threw back at the Nazis to get them out of their country and to seek revenge. And so, anytime anybody says, the Americans won the war or ally, the reality of it to me is that had there not been the war with Russia, the attack on Russia, would have been a very different outcome. And so the Russian people lost 30 million. The number, you can double or triple their number of dead as compared to all the other allies put together. And so there, and I was able to bring their the fortitude of their women in the next book, in Wolves at Our Door, when I describe the night witches. One of my very favorite examples, because they were all young women. They were given very flimsy old aircraft, and their job was to go literally, physically drop bombs on the German troops that were 5-10 miles away. They would do maybe 10 or more missions each night. And so they were very brave, very brave, and on their own, because the Russian men didn't give them any respect. They were subjected to, all of the, unfortunately, historically aggressive comments and graphic and things like that. So they had to deal with their men counterparts, and the fact that their planes were so slow that when the German Messerschmitts would come to try and shoot them down, they'd have to slow down, but they'd have to slow down to the point where their engine would stop. And so lots of times when the Germans were trying to shoot the night witches down, they would crash their planes. They were called night witches because they had struts and their dual wings that would whistle and make a sound that the Germans said sounded like a witch's broom through the sky. So they were the night witches. And there are a few that are still alive. And they were 18, 19, 17, 20 years old. Their command was 23 or 20, something like that. But they were feared. They did it. Once again, they're young, and they're seeking revenge, and they're defending their lives, their homeland, and themselves, and their unit. And so it was very difficult to defend. When they would come at night, they could even cut their engine, and there's no sound, and the bomb that they drop explodes.
Very brave, very brave. Very brave.
I find so many stories.
I wanted to ask you
the magnificent thing that women
a question.
Did in the war.
Can you explain? I wanted to ask you, talking about Istra in Russia. You're talking about the scorched earth policy. What is it? The scorched earth policy.
The scorched earth policy was about when Russia retreated, not leaving anything particularly that would help German forces that were advancing. There was no time to do things like gather up gold and jewelry and stuff like that. What they had time to do was to burn the fields and those types of things.
Okay.
And so they didn't want to leave anything that was of use to the Germans. Now, they couldn't move all the people. And so when the Germans would come in and conquer these areas, they would go into towns and places and rape the women and shoot the men. And I mean, just, it's, and so the response to that, when Russia, you know, was able to start pushing the Germans back, they were enraged, and so there were atrocities in the, you know, on both sides, but it was occasioned by the way that the German army, the Nazis, treated the Russian civilians. The German soldiers, of course, we know all about the, you know, the Aryan attitude and all those things, that it's evil. They thought the Russian people were below them, like, you know, slightly above, you know, animals, and so their treatment was correspondingly horrible. But ultimately, because of the massive numbers of Russian soldiers came back to destroy, you know, them. And was history. They didn't learn anything from history. You don't invade Russia.
No.
It's too big.
It's too big, and they are fighters.
Yeah,
Russian people are fighters.
Very much so, yeah. And there were women, and in the there. I don't believe there was much distinction between if you were recruited to be in the infantry. It didn't matter if you were male or female. You just you went, because the idea was the collective safety and life of the state. The idea, the Marxist idea, and so, you know, you just went and fought.
Yeah.
And many of them in the beginning didn't have any weapons. They just charged. And the Russians would send in a first wave of people, soldiers, men and women, who were basically targets that were instructed to pick up a weapon from a dead German and continue to fight. The next wave, some of them had weapons. And so finally, after they were able to kill down and break up some of the Germans, then they would send their best troops in who were all armed. And so it wasn't about, they had so many people that they were spending them as you or I would spend money at the market. They were spending it to win and to conquer the enemy. And it was all done with the idea of the betterment or the survival of the state. We're talking about politics forever, but once again, also in anybody's military, if you retreat or you show cowardice or whatever, you get shot. So either the enemy's going to shoot you, or your superiors are going to shoot you.
But you know,
that is a good example of this fortitude of men and women in the Russian military.
You know, the book is so well written, because when it's an history book. You said it's, you know, you say characters are fictional, but some facts. The series, all the French series you're talking about, La Ciotat, Toulouse, Grenoble, Nice, and also Oradour-sur-Glane is real. Is really true. You know, especially this horrific massacre to Oradour-sur-Glane is true. And can you explain a little bit? Also, you talk about the turning point of World War II. It's the Normandy landing.
Yeah, I could give you a little tiny bit of background into my family's relationship with France. When I was, this is 1969, 1970. My father, who was educated in Europe largely, spoke French fluently. His PhD was in philosophy. Specifically, Paul Petrek was one of his mentors, famous French philosopher. But Soren was predominantly his area of study. We lived in Aix in 1969 and 1970, and I went to an École Maternelle. And so Off I went. I was 6 years old in my little outfit, you know, and the director, the headmistress, her last name was Tosh. Wow. So Madame Tosh was, and she loved me. I don't know. I mean, when people would come, I was a cute little blonde-haired boy, you know. When people would, when her bosses would come, she would bring me out, right? And she would show them that she taught me how to do my letters and have me say a few words and things like that. And would always give me this big hug. She would, you know, she was about, I suppose, in her 60s maybe. And so when I was looking for a last name for my character, I had it. Madeline comes from a family friend who was in the Belgian resistance, Madeline Beran. Madeline's father was one of the, let's just call it, unit leaders of the Belgian resistance that worked very, very closely with the Catholic Church, particularly in Belgium. They were so involved that many Belgian Catholic priests were killed by the Nazis when they were discovered. Predominantly, there were nonviolent things that they did. They just tried to get the children, the Jewish children, out. And so they hid them in convents. They hid them in rural areas, in factories, and schools. Basically, in open sight if they could, or they would get them out through a network, through France, through Spain. Yeah,
it's what you wrote. They were chasing even suspected Jewish sympathizers.
Oh yeah, if you were caught helping Jewish people escape, they just shot you right there. And so Madeleine Beran was a 19-year-old, very beautiful, long black hair, all of that, working to protect the children. Her father, historically now, Israel has named many people who are what they call righteous among nations. And so Madeline's father is named by Israel as righteous among nations because of his level of involvement, and of course his daughter worked right with him. And so, she never spoke about it very much, but I had a couple of conversations with her where she would talk about emotions more than what specifically happened. She would talk about the fear, but then also being angry.
We were talking about the Normandy landing, knowing that beyond the scene, there are all these women and men, and from the Special Operation Executive and also French resistance, who all were beyond the scene to make this operation succeed, defeating Germany.
It was crucial to be able for the agents from the British Special Operations Executive worked with and provided materials, explosives, weapons, all those things to the resistance groups. That the main objective was to try to keep additional German troops from being able to come to the support of the German people, German army that was defending the beaches against the Allied invasion. And so I talked about a couple of different incidences. The one in particular where I talk about the fact that two young French women and a British Special Operations Executive male agent were able to disable hundreds of rail cars that were carrying tanks and munitions from being able to go to the front. They took all the oil out of the axles and they put in cement, a paste that would seize up the gears and not allow it to turn.
The glue. They talk about the glue. They use the glue too?
It was kind of, the British scientists came up with some kind of, I think it was like an epoxy, but they were able to make it where they needed to, you know, on site mostly, and then take all the axle oil out of the many. It took them all night to do it. Two girls and the guy and the agent, and then they replaced it with this gluey, pasty stuff that would initially work for a little bit and then turn solid. And so all these tanks and troop transports weren't able to be used to bring reinforcements to their comrades, the Nazi comrades, at the front. And that's a true story.
A true story, yeah. That's how
and for many, many years, the girls may still be alive. They'd be in their 80s probably. I don't think that the male agent who would still be alive, although it's possible, but they would get together regularly. And they formed a bond. And there were stories like that all over. There were stories where communications units were set out to destroy telephone lines and those. I can talk a little bit too, if you wish, about how the cold, lonely courage becomes and goes into at our door. After the D-Day invasion, the successful invasion, Madeline, positioned as a member of the F for France division, was able to then just go back home. And so when the Germans started sending the V-2 rockets from northern France, from other areas,
London,
to blow it up, that's when then she was persuaded by Jack, her husband, to go back in and take those out, destroy Germany's ability to do that. Also, didn't know that when she went back in until somewhat later that Germany was close to developing the atomic bomb as well. I think that, and there's history that supports the idea that they actually tested one. Who knows? But if they had put more emphasis into developing an atomic bomb, they might have beat us to the Americans and the British. It was people think it might think that it was just an American effort at the Manhattan Project. It was funded and put together by the American military, the American president, whatever. But most of the core people were German scientists that had fled. British scientists there, and other countries also had people scientists that were represented, and there at the Manhattan Project. The original idea was not to use it against the Japanese; it was to use it against the Germans. Yeah, and so the idea then that because these German scientists were the ones that left Germany, there were other German scientists that were involved in researching the very same thing. They either got very close or they had one. But it was too late, or they couldn't deliver it. They couldn't, put it on a plane, or perhaps they hadn't gotten to that point. But so for my story, I put together the V-2 rocket and an atomic weapon. And had there been a V-2 rocket that carried an atomic bomb and blew up London, the war would have ended everywhere. I mean, maybe not in the Pacific, but now we would have had two combatants with atomic weapons. But in Madeline, also in that book, I get a chance to have Hartman and Madeline in the field together.
We're talking, just to remind the listener, is the second book titled Wolves at Our Door.
Right. And it's the wolves themselves. My idea was that it was Madeline and Hartman. It could be everybody that's now coming to get Germany for their atrocities and to beat them in the war, because it was a global effort. There was an effort among all of the allies and the people in the countries. There were people in Germany they didn't have really well-developed resistance groups. There were many people that were certainly not Nazis. And so the long story short, though, that Madeline and Hartman go to a factory where the Germans are using slave labor to make V-2 rockets. Their job is to destroy it, and also to go after any production of an atomic weapon. And so they finally do get intelligence facts that lead them in that direction. And so then we get to meet the Night Witches. There are other characters that then come into Wolves at Our Door. And it is, I actually think that of the two books, I like the Wolves at Our Door better.
Oh, okay.
I wrote it later on in time, right? And it gave me a chance to show Madeline's interaction with other combatants.
Yeah.
And you know, I've already talked about her killing people as a soldier, as a spy.
Yeah, because in Courage, in the first book Courage, the nickname they gave her was the Angel of Death.
Yeah.
And now in Wolves at Our Door, she was part of these witches, the witches of the air.
Right. Yeah. They know about her, and you know, and there's a I did when I had with the way the Night Witches related, you know, to Madeline. They and you know, we have a circumstance, you know, where she's with Hartman, who accompanies her. The Night Witches also know who he is,
yes,
and they're afraid of him.
Respect,
like
a lot of respect. They're afraid.
I haven't written that book yet, but it will be about he loses his wife and daughters are killed by the Nazis, and that's what makes him. He was a hero. He was a hero, even though he was a Jewish person in the First World War.
But while reading, I was wondering, he was a captain or a general in this German army for the First World War. And how they found out he was Jewish? So they started.
Well, they would in the First World War. There were many Jewish men who were German, who were patriotic, proud
in Germany,
and they went to fight and died. And I mean, we're talking about thousands and thousands.
Yeah.
So when they came back, and of course, Jewish people have been persecuted for a long time. The focus then on eradicating Jewish culture, Jewish people, included the families of all of these men who had fought for their country.
Yeah.
And so they knew Hartman was Jewish, but he was also the very best soldier Germany produced in the First World War.
And spies,
good. And then their best spy. And all of these things. And so he thought they wouldn't come after him. For his family, but they did, and he blamed himself, and that's what turned on his rage. And when I write his book, he is a terrorist. I mean, in his own country, during the rise of the Nazi Party, people put up apartment buildings with families, and he's very, very.
But it's good. You
create would do that.
Like Madeleine, this character is a good character, Hartman, like Madeleine, because he was the best spy of the German army, and because he was Jewish, they start chasing him, going after him, killing his family. It's just kind of, and the book is also funny, you know, when you hear things are funny, you know, because when he killed one of the captain he was working with, he just say, "Wait for me in hell." It's funny. Yeah, I was just laughing. I was laughing. And also, they have some code. Madeleine, when she was waiting for the message to do what she has to do, and she listened to the radio, and they say, "Churchill's dog is gone." Is a code. You see. So it's funny.
I tried to include some of that because. I think people use humor in part, you know, also at all times, even at the worst times. We use it to try to survive bad situations. And so, and I also try between the German police officers Stenger and Willie to have some of that, because it's easier to explain their humanity through that, through the humor, than it is to go into a lot of discussion about why they don't like the Nazis, but they are patriotic. So I'm getting close to finishing the book called Under No Man's Land. That's the precursor. That's even before Courage. And it explains how Stenger and Willie and Hartman, he's in it.
Hartman is in it?
Yeah, and that's when he is the German Army's golden boy. He's a hero. He's in the newspaper.
Wow.
They give him the Iron Cross.
So don't say more. I'm waiting to read it.
Okay,
Yeah, don't say more. I will read it. Really. Yeah. It's also by audio ebook. No, it's not ebook. It's audio.
Yet, I have to have it translated. Well, translated, and then to see if Sega Egmont wants to record it. I think they probably will because it's part of the series. There's one other book that's already written that they haven't picked up yet. That's the Patience County War, where Madeline now is living in the United States. She has a restaurant in a small town in Missouri, where, if you remember from Courage, the paratrooper that she joins up with at the end on D-Day, that's where he and his family lives.
Oh, okay.
Many other people who had contact with John Trunz, because he stayed in the military in the Second World War, in Korea, and in Vietnam, and so he's a soldier. And so that story, Madeline is there, and the community is sort of invaded with methamphetamine drug people, and the Gray Army that she's part of, back. The wrong place to go.
Wow. Yeah. But this one is written already, right?
It's written already, yeah.
Is a paper book or audio?
Yeah, it's at this point it's only in English. You can get it in paperback through Kindle.
Okay.
Kindle through Amazon.
Okay, so it's good. So where to find your books and which format? Paper or audio?
Okay. You can find the French language audiobooks on Audible, and you can find them certainly if you go to Amazon anywhere in any country. You can get the French language audiobooks. You can get all of the English language e-books through Kindle, and you can get paperback copies of Patience County War. The books are also, I have a publisher in Italy. It's an Italian. Saga Egmont is from Denmark. They're a Danish company, but they are the largest digital publisher in Europe now. Purchased different distributors in France and England and places, Germany, and so you can get the books through their websites or websites. You know, I do also prefer to read a hard copy book. It's difficult to, and the one thing about audiobooks is that you hear the story with somebody else's inflections and description. You know, when you read, it's only your own mind, and that's, to me, is important. Because every single reader who reads a physical book or the words ebook, you know, who reads a physical book is different, and so every time it's read by somebody different, it's a different book.
It's a different book. Really, it's a different book. Yeah.
You can't. Movies do the same thing. They take away that. Audiobooks take some of that away also. They should never replace physical written word. That's the art.
Yes.
It's just like when we go to look at a Picasso or Van Gogh.
Gauguin, Renoir.
I had the same birthday as Vincent Van Gogh, by the way.
Oh, really?
March 30th. I've been to, of course, we've been to Arles and the places where he painted.
Yeah.
Is it Les Invalides Art? No. There's the asylum that he was at. That's in Saint-Remy, I think. Saint-Remy, where he voluntarily went, but he was there for many years. Well, yeah, he was there for years, a couple of years, I think. But anyway, so you see some of the things that he painted, and they also had a gallery where other people who were there who were mentally ill, where they painted. Some of them are very frightening. He was about beauty and color.
Yeah, colors. A lot.
I've been to various museums or parts of the world, and if you go into the Impressionist area and you sit on a bench far enough away where you can't identify the picture, I can see I know when it's a Van Gogh because they glow.
You glow, Van
Very
Gogh.
great. And I tried it. I tried it in London. I tried it here in Minneapolis. They have some Van Goghs at the Minneapolis Institute of Art. In Paris, and it's the same way.
Yeah.
It may be just my
Van Gogh.
but Impressionist painting is my favorite anyway. I mean,
oh, okay, Van Gogh.
Yeah,
Van Gogh.
and
Okay.
You know, with X,
But Claude Monet,
Yes.
Claude Monet too. He paint a lot of, you know, flowers, colors. Claire Monet.
Saint Victoire.
You can, yeah.
Ramon Saint Victoire.
Yes. You can recognize.
I've been up that 4 times, 5 times. First time when I was 6 years old, in X, we went to climb Ramon Saint Victoire, and so that that mountain and that area plays an important part in our family's lives and history. Every time we go back, we end up in X. We lived in Cassis for a while. La Ciotat is where our close friends, Jeets and what was it, Le Grand Coney, and so my parents returned to that area when my sons were growing up. We went there. We'd go to the sea, we'd go to the restaurants, we'd go to the market, and it's close enough to go to X that go to the larger markets and see things. And so,
nice.
Most recently, I went with my family to go to see the school that I went to. It's still, yeah.
Where? La Ciotat? To La Ciotat?
No, in X.
Axe. Okay.
Yeah, we lived in an apartment building that was close. It's the northern part of X. It's a ways away from Le Cours Mirbeau, the main road where all the restaurants are, with the garçons, places like that. That's the lower part. But if you go farther into the city and north, that's where we were. And not too, I remember the market and things being relatively close. But of course, we walked everywhere. It was 1970.
Wow! You talk about Grenoble in the book. Grenoble. I was born in Paris myself, and I studied there. And my daughter was born in Grenoble.
That's where translator is born, because where it is, she grew up. Her father was Italian, French. So French and Italian.
Yeah.
Her crib language.
A lot in Grenoble. Yeah.
Yeah. And so she translates also for Italian.
Oh. Okay.
And poets. I also am a poet. I've been published in a variety of different magazines. But also then of course in French. She does French and Italian. And then when she went to university, that's where she studied English.
Okay.
She did her master's degree in, basically the way to say it is in translation.
Good.
Translation. And so she's very, very good. And when I find somebody that's compatible to the way that I write, and the same thing with Cécile Delpierre. She's very compatible with, she's from Provence. She's a dramatic actress, all of those things, and so the fact that they're women also is important to me, because this story is for women. It's not only, anybody can read it, men will enjoy it, fine. But I wanted to make sure that there was something that reminded people that women played such a pivotal role in every country in winning the war.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, as soon as the war was over, then all those stories were pushed away, and it's wrong.
They forgot the role of women.
Yeah, we're striving for equality in the world, and it seems, particularly in this country, every time we take a step forward, we take a step back. But that, all we can do is go and vote and support equality everywhere.
Everywhere. Exactly. Correct. Wow. Thank you to you, Mr. Soren. It was a pleasure having you in the show.
Thank you.
Talk to you very soon. We're waiting for the next book.
Oh, yeah. It's in there. All right. Bye now.
Thank. Bye. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, we just heard Mr. Soren talk about his 2 books. The first one we talked a lot about was Courage, and the second one is Wolves at Our Door. So, to talk about courage, a lady called Madeleine Tosh, she has a strong spirit. At the beginning, you read she's a young girl helping her parents, taking care of a restaurant. But after a while, after going through, she lost her twin brother. She got raped by a German captain, and she just changed. She became what they gave her a nickname called the Angel of Death. So, very interesting book, good story, very informative story. Now, if you love Parlons de Livres, don't hesitate, subscribe, and thank you to all of those who did already, because you help us just build a strong book community. Thank you to you all. See you soon.